Hello and welcome to another tutorial. My name is Jeasy Sehgal. I am an Unreal Engine Gold Authorized Instructor Partner, as well as the founder and director of Virtual Production Dojo and Unreal Engine Gold Training Center. In this tutorial, we will be looking at how to create a custom landscape, as well as converting it into an island, followed by adding a custom PCG system that harnesses the methodologies of custom graphs to project foliage systems onto the landscape, as well as projecting automatic removal of the foliage based on some parametric rules for water bodies. So first of all, let's set up the weather and light system. For this purpose, I'm using the Ultra Dynamic Sky and Ultra Dynamic Weather package. These are paid packages that you can get from fab.com. Ultra Dynamic Sky and Ultra Dynamic Weather are complex systems that harness all the lighting and volumetric cloud system, the volumetric fog system, as well as day and night cycles. Here you can see the volumetric clouds, and let's quickly go over some of the parameters I like to set up that gives me a base for the atmospherics. Some of the settings that I like to use: switch on simulate real sun, moon and stars under simulation. If you want, you could set up the moon and sun manually. Switch on the moon phase changes over time. Switch on the volumetric fog, the render global volumetric material, the ground fog, and the water fog values. Enable the sunlight shaft bloom and the moonlight shaft bloom, followed by the sun's lens flare. And render water caustics. Switch on interior adjustment as well. Right. Under basic controls, make sure you select the correct project mode, cinematic or offline, or gaming or online. Let's go to the landscape mode. When you first start, your material slot is going to be empty. We are going to be using the Brushify Auto Landscape material. For that purpose, I'm going to go to my content drawer, to Brushify, to landscape, to material, and put the mi_landscape material instance. Here you can see me setting up the layer info for all the biomes that come with the Brushify landscape material. You need to set this up once per project in your landscape. For the tutorial purposes, I'm going to go with a size of 127 by 127 quads for the landscape. Let's hit create. Give it a few moments and you will see that the landscape has been generated and it has a grass material as well as a procedurally generated grass, foliage, and some flowers. Let's do a quick test by adding our third-person character. That's looking great. Next, let's convert our landscape into an island. To do that, we need to get the water body ocean from the Place Actor panel. Click and drag and drop it onto your landscape. Give it a few moments. Make sure you select the water layer and the water plugin will start processing. It will deform or terraform your landscape and render the shaders for your water body ocean. The water bodies are a plugin inside Unreal Engine. You must activate this plugin in order to be able to work with the water. To do this, simply go to Edit, Plugins, and search for water. Activate all the plugins for water. Save and restart your Unreal Engine project. And once you come back, you will be able to apply the water bodies. This is great. However, I would like my island to have some organic feel to it. So let's go through some of the features in the details panel for the water body ocean that we can adjust. For example, the curl noise. I'm experimenting with some numbers here under curl 1 amount and curl 2 amount. There is no right or wrong number. Feel free to experiment with what levels suit your landscape. Just remember that curl 1 amount, curl 2 amount, curl 1 tiling, and curl 2 tiling are compounding results. Less will always give you more. Next, let's go to the landscape mode under the Manage tab and add a new landscape layer. And under the Blueprint brush system, I'm going to choose one of the Brushify Smart Brush landmass brushes. Select and click on your landscape. So this harnesses the landmass plugin. Again, a plugin you need to activate under Edit, Plugin, and search for landmass. As you can see, these are alpha masks that terraform your landscape. And how are they different from sculpting a landscape? This terraform or the brush can be moved or transformed, rotated, and scaled. It can also be duplicated, whereas when you sculpt a landscape, you cannot move that sculpt to another location. Okay, let's add a few more of these around our landscape. I like to have on all four corners to establish my base parametrics. I'm going to add one of the volcano cauldrons. This happens to be one particular brush that I really like. You can also merge one brush onto the other to create your unique shapes. As you can see, they blend with each other quite nicely when intersecting. Let's add the moorland to give a little bit of texture to the landscape itself. This has great erosion lines. Okay, great. Let's try a quick playtest with our mannequin. As you can see, the Brushify Auto Landscape material understands the height of your landscape and automatically generates mud and rocks on the slopes. The mannequin is 6 feet tall, and as you can see, this is quite a large landscape. A little bit of fine tuning. Okay, now let's add some distant mountains around our island. The Brushify pack comes with some distant mountains as well. So here you can see me scaling them and placing them in the ocean. This is a great strategy to bring some realism to your landscape. Here I'm duplicating the same static mesh of the distance mountain around the island. By duplicating or instancing a single static mesh keeps your project optimized. You can scale and rotate the mountains so they don't look identical to each other. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm adding some background birds. It's a great idea to keep your project well organized. Here I'm selecting everything that is related to the landscape and adding it into a folder of its own in the outliner, including the water zone and water body ocean. So let's add some of the birds into our level. Set up the size for the loop of flight. As these birds are flying rather high, I want them to move slower. Increase the size of the number of birds, but if you wanted, you could also increase the bird size in the details panel. I'm adding a couple more birds to the environment. Again, this is a personal choice that you can add birds if you wanted. Next, let's add the procedural foliage volume to our landscape. This you will find under Brushify as well. In order for this to work, you have to go to the editor preferences and search for procedural and procedural foliage to be set as true. Now, from the Brushify pack, I'm going to drag and drop the Rocks Moorland procedural foliage volume. These volumes are pre-set up and provided with the Brushify pack for rocks, for heather, and for many other procedural meshes to be generated onto your landscape. So let's adjust it to our island. Scroll down in the details panel until you come to the procedural foliage section, and all you need to do is click Resimulate. As you can see, it has simulated or added these rocks onto my landscape. These represent actual landslide and rocks falling. I'm going to duplicate the procedural foliage volume, and this time I'm going to call it Heather. Let's scroll down to procedural foliage, and I'm going to drag and drop the heather and hit Resimulate. I could have also dragged the actual volume and resized it, but seeing that the first one was already properly resized, I simply duplicated it, and by hitting Resimulate, now we are getting patches of heather scattered over our landscape. Okay, going back to the landscape mode, this time I'm going to the paint section, and I'm going to choose the snow layer. Adjust the brush size to your liking. Make sure you're on the first landscape layer that I have renamed to paint here. And now if I paint over my hills, it is going to give me snow on top of those hills. Always remember, little gives you more. As in, the less you do, the better the effect. I am simply gently painting the tops of the hills as our background mountains are snow peaked. So to maintain a consistency across the landscape, I like to paint some snow over the hilltops as well. A little bit around the volcano cauldron as well. And these biome paint layers blend with each other. You do not have to be perfect in your painting to give it an organic feel. Randomizing how you paint the layers always adds better value. Okay, let's have a look. So as you can see, there is snow. Now, let's get on with creating our custom PCG system. Right-click and go to Create a new blueprint. I'm going to call it BP for blueprint underscore town. Let's call it town clearing. Double click to open the blueprint. Click the plus add button and look for the billboard. This adds a placeholder icon that helps us see this in the level. If you want, you can always go and change this texture to one of your liking. The dragon icon is the default icon from Unreal Engine. All right. So moving on, let's press the add button again and search for spline. Drag and drop it onto the default scene route and make sure it is not a child of the billboard. The spline is made up of different points. By selecting a point, we can move it forward. We can also close this loop holding Alt. I can duplicate and add more points. So hold Alt, left click on one of the arrows and drag, and you will duplicate and create a new spline point. Here I have simply created 3 more points on a closed loop in the details panel by selecting splines on the left hand side and searching for close loop on the right hand detail panel. Now I'm adding a PCG element. Right click in your content browser and add a new PCG graph. PCG underscore forest PCG is a plugin. You need to activate that under Edit Plugin, search for Procedural Content Generation. In my blueprint under PCG, under Instance, I am going to drag and drop that PCG graph. Under the name of BP town clearing itself, I'm going to go to the detail panel and I'm searching for a tag. Under actors, I'm looking for a tag. Click the plus button and in index 0, where it says none, I'm going to call it town clearing, capital T, capital C, no space. You must remember this name because this is the exact tag that we will be using inside our PCG graph. Compile and save. Let's close this out, and now let's get everything saved first and into our PCG forest. Right click in the graph and we're going to search for the World Ray hit query. Let's pull out a wire from the World Ray hit query and look for the surface sampler node. In the details panel, make sure the debug is enabled and search for unbounded and mark it as true. Next, we are going to search for union node. Followed by the difference node. Pulling from here, we will search for attribute noise. Next, we'll search for the density filter node. All these nodes are blueprint nodes. If you're following along, in the density filter lower bound in the detail panel, I'm adding 0.01 and upper bound set to 0.99999. Drag from the out node and search for transform points node. This is an important node, and in the transform points node, for the offset minimum, I'm going to set this to -45 in the z-axis and offset maximum to -35 in the z-axis. For the rotation maximum in the z-axis, let's put 360 degrees, and scale minimum 0.5 and scale maximum 1.0, and switch off absolute scale. Dragging out of the transform points, we are going to search for self-pruning, followed by the bounce modifier node. Next, let's bring in the static mesh spawner. With the static mesh spawner selected in the details panel, let's go down to the section called mesh selector after setting up our seed. And under mesh entries, let's add an entry. You will see a new entry added called index 0. Let's open that up and then go to the descriptor, and you will see the static mesh section is empty. I'm going to be using the Quixel European Beach trees. So click and drag the static mesh tree, and I'm going to add a few more. We can actually set up some weights for these trees as well, and they will grow as per the weight priority. Here I'm setting up the static mesh for all the indexes that I've just added. So different trees per index. Okay, let's save this, and let's go in our PCG content generation, and let's add it to our landscape to see what it does. It seems there may be a node missing here. It seems I made a mistake. Um, Sorry about that, folks. We need a get landscape data node, not the world ray node. So let's connect the get landscape data to a surface sampler. And now here we have our PCG generation automatically happening onto our landscape. Switching on unbounded will grow your static meshes across the entire landscape, and switching off will keep it within the bounds. So let's quickly test it out and see. My character is walking through the trees. How do we set up the collision for these trees? If you are using this for cinematic purposes, aka real-time virtual production, or for ICVFX purposes, it will not make too much difference if you have the collisions on your static meshes or not. However, this is a common thing that catches a lot of people, and it took me a while to understand this as well. So how do we set this up? Let's have a look. First, let's try and get some of our seeding proper. In the density filter, if I change the lower and upper bounds, you can see the amount of trees that are being spawned or generated. Let's select the static mesh spawner node and search for collision. From no collision, let's change it to block all. Scroll further down and you will find another collision box. Make sure you put it to block all dynamic. Same for index 2, block all dynamic. Essentially, what we are trying to do is set up the collision for each and every static mesh that we have added. Let's save it. And now let's test out the collision on our trees. Yes, we have collision. I'm going to select all these nodes and press C to add a comment for the selection. Here you can see the comment group. C is the shortcut. And let's just call this collection of nodes as tree, starting from attribute noise to density filter, transform points, self-pruning, bounce modifier, and static mesh spawner. I've copied the same node and pasted it. I'm going to add a density filter node. If you're a creative like me who likes everything well aligned, the shortcut is to select all the nodes and press the alphabet Q. So on our landscape, we have our PCG that is generating the trees. And for this static mesh spawner, I have gone and I've changed the trees to have saplings instead. The moment I connect it, it automatically generates. I have pulled the node from the difference node to connect it here. Again, changing the seed value will change the placement of that particular static mesh on your landscape. What this is a PCG recipe that you create for the purposes of generating the foliage or any other static mesh. For example, a procedurally generated building system or roads system. You can create your own recipe in the PCG graph that will generate the way you wish. Let's test it out. The saplings do not have the collision. However, the trees do because we set them up previously. Let's go and comment all of these as well. What were we going to call these? These were saplings. I'm going to copy paste and create a new recipe. This time in my static measures, I'm adding some seedlings. Again, the European beech from Quetzal trees. Connect the attribute noise to the difference node. You will notice this time around I have not added a bounce modifier. That was done deliberately in order to keep the seedlings more spread out. Let's comment this out as well. Next, we are going to search for the distance node and let's set the density to 500 maximum distance. I'm going to add a density remap. In Unreal Engine 5.6, this has been renamed to attribute remap. A density remap node from Unreal Engine 5.5 and earlier has been renamed as density remap. I'm going to add the transform points node again. Set the offset minimum to -25 and offset maximum to -5 this time round. Absolute rotation on with the rotation max at 360 degrees in the Z index. Scale minimum from 0.5 to maximum 1. I'm going to copy and paste the bounds modifier. Followed by the static mesh spawner. Connect the difference node to the distance node for and let's comment this out. What are we calling these? These are going to be our reeds that are going to grow by the water edge. So here you can see my trees, my saplings, my seedlings, and my reeds all being generated procedurally onto my landscape. Let's try and proceed with the lake and river. So I'm going to add a getSpline data node, change it to all world actors, and actor selection by class. Under actor selection class, let's search for water body lake. So here we have our water body lake. So the getSpline data node now has the class water body lake. So all world actors by class and water body lake. Adding to this, we are going to add the spline sampler, and we are going to keep it on interior because the lake is a closed loop spline. Make sure you set it as unbounded and add the seed that you wish. Next, let's add a projection node. This node will help us to project this particular graph onto the landscape, and we are going to add that to the difference node in the primary graph as shown. What I can also do is add a spline sampler node again, and this time we are going to put it on distance. So it is slightly different from the first one, the one above. So distance increment 50, again add the seed that you prefer, and this is so that we can connect the reeds to the edges of the lake and drag from that spline sampler to the distance node. Let's comment this out as well. I'll call it lake projection. I've duplicated the one above, but this time with the getSpline data, I'm going to change it such that we are going to add a tag called town clearing from the blueprint, the spline blueprint that we had created, and under the component selection tag, I'm adding the same tag as from the blueprint. This is to ensure that the spline blueprint, when added, will move the trees and the procedurally generated meshes out of that space to give us a clearing. Let's try this out. Alright, so right now the projection is not working because we need to add the getLandscape data directly to the lake projection node as well as the blueprint spline projection node. This blueprint spline projection node goes into the difference node as well as shown. And now if we test it out, as you can see, the trees are automatically cleared. Let's try with the lake. Give it a moment, and here you can see the trees automatically are removed from the projection of the lake. As a note, over here, what I've shown you is the projection method. However, if you were using an auto landscape material like Brushify that I'm using that has multiple biome paint layers, we could, in fact, get the data of those different layers, the paint layers, and we could paint, let's say, mud or beach and use those paint layers to have the trees move away as well. So there are multiple ways that you can have the projection on the landscape, by paint layers, by attributes, by projection. Let's comment this out as well so we keep our graph neat and tidy. Moving on. Let's get the actor data layer, put it to all world actors by class, and this time I'm going to look for the water body river. So you will see that I have chosen a get actor data instead of get spline data this time. And from here, we are going to add the spline samplers, same as above. Quick tip, by selecting all the nodes, you can press the Q key and it will straighten it. All right, so with the spline samplers, I'm putting the subdivisions per segment to 25. Feel free to experiment with this. Add a bounce modifier to the spline sampler. And let's make this minimum on the Y and Z for 500 each, as well as the bounce maximum. Add the bounce modifier to the difference node, and let's have a look at this working. Don't forget to comment it out. Select all the nodes, press the C key to comment. All right. Moment of truth. Let's add the river. And it is working. Keeps things simple. We can copy and paste from the lake projection for the spline data. Again, change it by class for the actor selection, and actor selection class will be water body river. The spline sampler needs to change from on interior to on spline, and subdivisions per segment, let's put 50 for the moment. The projection node will add to the difference node as well as the projection target from the get landscape data layer. I've got the get spline data, spline sampler, distance, and transform points, feeding into the projection node. And the get landscape data feeding into the projection target. Time to tidy up our graph. Comment it out as river projection. For the BP tone clearing projection, I'll connect it to the distance node of the reads section as well. The graph is looking good, and here we have the desired result. So this is how our entire graph looks like. I prefer to comment as I go. It's just good practice. So when you share it with your team on a project, anyone else opening up your graph can easily understand what sections are designed for which functions. I'm going to make a small environment using the newly designed graph system. I'm going to speed this up and see you shortly. Now that we have our river and lake, let's look at the river simulation. So in the place actor panel, I'm searching for shallow water river. Drag and drop it to your level. You will not see anything happen just yet. Select it in the outliner, and in the details panel, let's look for water component. So here I'm going to add the source river water bodies. Click the plus to add an element, and in the index 0, select water body river. You will see a color change. Nothing to worry about. Scroll up, and under utilities you will see the reset button. Let's click that and you will see a live simulation of your river's flow. This method is a new addition in Unreal Engine 5.6, and it gives you realistic river flow. So this is a live simulation running right now. In a moment I will show you how to bake the simulation so that it doesn't have to compute all the time. Here we can see that the river is breaking its bank because the way the landscape has been sculpted when I added the river. I'm adding a few more rocks to the edge of the river. Search the rocks and select the rocks and search for tag, and in the actor tag I'm adding river. Do the same thing for the river, and under bottom contours tag add the exact tag. By adding this, you will see that the simulation now hits the rocks. Okay, let's run the simulation again and let's see what happens. So as you can see, the water flow is now being disrupted by this rock that I added with the tag river for the rock as well as in the shallow water river for the bottom contour. So now I have pasted that material from shallow water river into the lake material as well to match it. Going back to my landscape mode, I have my primary layers. I'm going to add a new landscape edit layer above the water layer. Let's tidy up our layers and let's call this new layer sculpt for sculpting. And I'm going to choose the smooth brush and start to blend in my landscape, especially these harsh edges, as you can see, for the lake. So gentle. You may have to use a bit of sculpting and then smoothing so it blends in better. It's good to remember that in nature, perfection comes from imperfection. It is all right if it is not a perfect line around the lake and the river. Just doing a quick touch-up. With this, now you can proceed to create your environment and bring your worlds to life for real-time virtual production, cinematography, for your games, or simple visualization. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial as much as I've enjoyed making it for you, and hope this will add a lot of value to your work in the future. Once again, on behalf of Virtual Production Dojo and myself, Jeasy Sehgal, Unreal Engine Gold Authorized Instructor Partner and founder of Virtual Production Dojo, as well as Graphic Monk Production, feel free to come to virtualproductiondojo.com to join some courses and to learn as well as share with the community of creators around you. Keep learning and keep creating. We look forward to seeing the amazing creations you come up with and the new combinations of PCG system that you design that can enhance your world.